Welcome to Midnight Confessions, where the shadows speak louder than the silence. Tonight's story will pull you into a chilling world of fear, obsession, and secrets too dark to ignore. Stay with us, because once it begins, you won't be able to look away. Let's start the story. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was in 2018. At 22, I thought I understood stress, exhaustion, and sleepless nights. Between my senior psychology thesis, pulling endless coffee shop shifts on Capitol Hill, and constant pressure from my parents about grad school applications, I was unraveling without even noticing. My life ran on caffeine and guilt. That October, just as storm season tore into Seattle, I was offered what felt like salvation. My dad's old friend, Daniel Mercer, invited me to stay at his rental house on Rainier Avenue while he went hiking in the Cascades. He promised it would be peaceful. Quiet. You'll finally get some rest, he said over the phone. When I arrived, the house looked like something out of a magazine, freshly painted craftsman style with big windows and polished wood floors. Inside though, it felt sterile. Bare walls, spotless countertops, no personal touches. The only thing alive in the place was a constant, low hum. It wasn't the fridge. It was Daniel's security system. Tiny black dome cameras in every corner, their glowing eyes feeding into a monitor upstairs. It'll make you feel safer, Daniel grinned when he handed me the keys. But as the rain pounded the windows that first night, I kept staring at those screens too long. Every creak in the house dragged my eyes back to the monitors. At midnight, while making tea, I noticed something wrong. The back porch door was cracked open. Just a sliver. My chest tightened. I knew I had locked it. Heart hammering, I slammed it shut, twisted the deadbolt twice, and whispered to myself, "It's just the wind." But the thought festered, growing darker with every storm-soaked night. By the third night, I was raw with unease. The rain roared like a waterfall, the gutters groaned, and the pine in the yard moaned against the storm. I sat upstairs sketching, when suddenly the power flickered. Just for a heartbeat. But when the monitors blinked back to life, I froze. The hallway closet door, the one I'd shut earlier, was now slightly ajar. My pen rolled from the desk as I leaned closer. The feed glitched for a fraction of a second. When the image returned, my blood ran cold. A tall, dark figure stood in the hall. It didn't look around the room. It didn't move for the door. Instead, it lifted its head and stared directly into the camera, straight at me. I gasped, elbow knocking my stapler to the floor. The clang echoed. On screen, the figure's head snapped toward the sound. Then came the footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Rising one by one up the staircase. "Don't freeze," I whispered to myself. "Move, Clara. Move." Fumbling with my phone, my sweaty fingers slipped on the screen. The footsteps drew closer, groaning wood beneath them. Desperate, I shoved open the window. Rain lashed my face, the roof slicked beneath me. I crawled out barefoot just as the figure reached the top of the stairs. Lightning split the sky. I jumped. Agony shot through my legs as I hit the muddy ground, but I ran anyway, screaming into the storm until police sirens cut through the rain. They searched every inch of the house. No intruder. No forced entry. Just the back door's glass fractured. Stranger still, the cameras went dark between 11:55 and 12:15. The exact time I saw him. I refused to step back inside. Daniel brushed it off as storm interference. But his cameras weren't supposed to fail. Even after leaving, I couldn't escape it. At night, lying awake in my apartment, I'd hear phantom footsteps on stairs that didn't exist. When I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless shadow turning its head toward the lens. Months later, as winter bit into Seattle, I spotted it again. Across the street, parked near a laundromat, an old silver sedan with a cracked bumper. The same car I'd seen outside Daniel's house the day I fled. The nightmares only worsened. Always the same, creaking stairs, a dark figure, and that suffocating feeling of being watched. One February morning, I opened my apartment door to find a folded piece of damp paper lying on the floor. Blank. No words. Just left there. That's when I knew. He wasn't gone. He had followed me. And he's still waiting for the moment I forget to lock the door. Let's start second story. It was December 2014, and winter came down on Newcastle like a blade. The cold that year felt alive. It sliced through coats, seeped into bones, and clung to every breath like frost. I had just signed the lease on a tiny terrace house, the kind of place only a desperate student would choose. I was in my final year of English literature, deadlines piled high, nerves stretched thin. The dorms had become unbearable, too much noise, too much chaos. I told myself the terrace house, cheap and close to work, would be my sanctuary. I should have known better. The house was old, its wallpaper peeling in strips, its furnace groaning like an animal in pain. At night, the windows rattled as if the wind was clawing to get in. Still, I told myself it was mine. I was being independent. I didn't realize I was stepping straight into a nightmare. The first time I saw him was after a long cafe shift. Snow blanketed the streets, muffling the city. My boots crunched softly, my breath a pale ghost in the air. I cut past the bus stop like always, and that's when I froze. A man sat on the stone wall. His clothes looked like they'd been dredged from the dirt, streaked with dust and dried mud. His skin was bloodless, pale as candle wax. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his eyes, glassy, flat, unblinking, followed me. I walked faster, my chest tight. Don't be stupid, I told myself. He's just waiting for a bus. Just resting. But when I reached my front door, my hands shook so badly I fumbled the keys twice. Inside, I leaned against the door whispering, "It's nothing. You're just tired." But deep down, I knew something about that man wasn't right. That night, the house groaned louder than ever. Pipes banged. The furnace sputtered. But then came a different sound, one sharp, deliberate thud from upstairs. I froze. When you live alone, you don't get to ignore noises. You have to be the one to check. Step by step, I climbed the staircase, each board groaning under my weight. The hallway stretched narrow, shadows pressing in close. That's when I saw it. The spare bedroom door was ajar. "Hello," I whispered, voice trembling. No answer. I nudged the door open with my foot. The room looked empty, until I noticed the boot prints. Wet, dark marks trailed across the floorboards, straight to the window. My breath caught. I yanked the curtain aside. And there he was. The man from the bus stop. Standing in my snowy garden. His pale face tilted upward, his eyes locked on mine. Unblinking. Silent. I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped it. I whispered to my friend, "Someone's watching me." Her voice sharpened, "Call the police. Now." But before I could, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then black. The furnace died. The storm howled. And in the silence, I heard it, breathing. Deep, steady. Inside the house. I bolted. No socks, no hesitation. Shoved my boots on and tore down the stairs, wrenching the door open. Snow blasted into my face, but I didn't stop. I ran until my lungs burned, until the neon glow of a convenience store bled through the storm. Inside, shivering, I gasped out my story. The clerk called the police. When the officers arrived, I begged them not to make me go back. But they searched anyway. The back door was forced open. Muddy footprints tracked through the kitchen and up the stairs. But no one was there. "No one's inside now," the officer said. Those words chilled me more than the snow. Because it meant he had been there. And now he was gone. I never slept in that house again. I broke the lease, packed my things and fled. But leaving didn't free me. The image of him standing in the snow, silent, still, those flat eyes locked on mine, burned into me. Sometimes, years later, I still catch myself staring out a window at night, half expecting to see him there. Not random. Not accidental. Waiting. And that's the truth about monsters like him. They don't always need to break down your door to destroy you. Sometimes, all it takes is a stare that never leaves you. Let's start the third story. In the fall of 2016, I thought I was escaping failure. Cleveland had chewed me up and spat me out, a ruined internship, a breakup that hollowed me out, and debts that felt like chains around my neck. When my best friend Jordan called with an offer, it felt like salvation. A cheap 2-bedroom rental in Raven Ridge. Fresh start. New life. I said yes without hesitation. I should have asked why it was so cheap. The house we moved into sagged under the weight of years. The paint peeled in strips, the gutters drooped like broken spines. But it had a porch, and for 2 broke guys, that was enough. What I didn't know then was that Raven Ridge wasn't the kind of place you start over in. It was the kind of place you get trapped in. Main Street was lined with shuttered storefronts, faded for sale signs, and silence heavy as fog. Rain drowned the town almost every day. The air smelled of mildew and rot. But none of that chilled me as much as the house across the street. A rotting Victorian. Its shutters dangled by a hinge. Vines strangled its siding. The windows, cracked and grime-streaked, still reflected light like eyes. Even in daylight, it looked alive. Watching. "Relax," Jordan laughed when I told him. "It's abandoned. Nobody's been there for years." But his laugh sounded thin. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roof. Thunder cracked hard enough to shake the windows. While unpacking dishes in the kitchen, I glanced toward the Victorian. My stomach turned to ice. Something moved behind the fractured upstairs window. A shadow. Slow. Deliberate. "Jordan," I hissed. He leaned over, his face pale in the lightning. His jaw tightened. "No way," he muttered. But I knew he saw it too. That was the first time I wondered if we traded one nightmare for another. The next morning, the storm had dulled into drizzle. Jordan went for groceries, leaving me alone. I sat on the porch, stale coffee in hand, staring at the Victorian. That's when an older man shuffled up. His boots were caked with mud, his face lined like weathered wood. He stopped at the edge of the porch, gave me a nod, then looked at the Victorian with a hollow stare. "Keep your curtains closed at night," he rasped. "That house doesn't stay empty long." My skin prickled. "What do you mean?" He just shook his head. "Don't stare too long. Folks who do regret it." Then he walked away. When Jordan came back, I told him. He laughed it off. But I couldn't shake the man's tone, the way he looked at the house like he was remembering something he'd tried to forget. That night, the storm came back. Wind howled through cracks in the window. Rain lashed the porch. I sat in the living room, staring at the Victorian, shadows crawling inside it. Jordan sat beside me, pale. "We should check it out," he said. My stomach twisted. "Are you insane?" "If someone's squatting in there, we should know. I don't want to wake up with them breaking into our place." The thought of not knowing terrified me more than the storm. So I agreed. At midnight, we crossed the street, our shoes sinking into soggy grass. The Victorian loomed, its windows black and fractured. Jordan pushed the door. It groaned but opened. The air inside reeked of mildew. The wood beneath our feet was damp and soft. My flashlight beam cut through swirling dust. I expected filth, decay. But what I found was worse. The furniture was covered neatly with white sheets, like the family had left in a hurry but meant to return. Family photos still sat on the mantel, smiling parents, a little girl with a crooked grin. The house wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. "Creepy," Jordan whispered, his flashlight trembling. We climbed the staircase, each step moaning like it would snap under us. Upstairs, the hallway stretched long, wallpaper peeling in strips. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Not ours. "Jordan," I whispered, my throat dry. He was right beside me, his face pale as death. The footsteps grew closer. Echoing. Deliberate. Panic took over. We bolted. I slipped on the slick floor, catching myself on the banister. We crashed out the front door, sprinting across the street as rain lashed our faces. On our porch, gasping for air, I turned back. Lightning split the sky. In the upstairs window of the Victorian, two pale faces stared down at us. We didn't sleep that night. By morning, Jordan already had bags half-packed. I couldn't blame him. Neither of us argued when we left Raven Ridge by the end of the week. But leaving didn't free me. Storms still bring the memory back, the sound of footsteps on rotting stairs, the sight of those two faces in the glass. Jordan won't talk about it. But I can't stop thinking. That house wasn't abandoned. It had just been waiting. And maybe some houses don't want to stay empty. Let's start the fourth story. In the spring of 2015, I thought I'd finally caught a break. Graduate school in Austin was crushing me. Endless assignments, student debt, and a part-time bookstore job that barely covered groceries. When I found a rental house on Cedar Grove Drive, cheap rent split between 4 women, it felt like salvation. The house itself seemed welcoming. Wide porch shaded by a sprawling oak, hardwood floors that smelled faintly of lemon polish, just enough space for us to pretend we were adults. My roommates, Kayla, kind but scatterbrained, Aaron, quiet and withdrawn, and Rachel, sharp-tongued and cutting, were strangers who quickly became part of my daily life. But Rachel wasn't just sharp. She was a storm in human form. Every word of hers was a blade wrapped in silk. First it was dishes in the sink, then noise at the wrong time, then jabs at my dreams. "Maybe journalism isn't your thing, Sophie. You never finish what you start." She smiled as she said it, but it stayed with me like poison. I tried to win her over. I bought groceries, swapped chores, invited her to study. Nothing softened her. Eventually, I stopped trying. I told myself I could endure her venom until graduation. But then Nathan knocked on the door. Rachel's boyfriend. Too loud, too smug, always smirking like the world was in on his private joke. The weekend the other girls went on a beach trip, I stayed behind, craving silence. Alone in the house, I thought I could finally breathe. Until the knock came at 7 p.m. I opened the door, expecting the landlord. Instead, Nathan leaned against the frame like he owned it. "Rachel's not here," I said quickly. He smirked. "That's fine. I'm here for you." Before I could answer, he pulled out his phone. On the screen were photos. My room. My bed. My private space, taken from outside, through the thin curtains. Blood drained from my face. "Either you play nice," he whispered, "or Rachel gets these." My stomach twisted. My hands shook. "Get out, Nathan." He stepped closer, lips curling. "You really think she'll believe you?" I shoved him hard, slammed the door, and locked it. My body shook so violently I slid to the floor, my phone clutched like a lifeline. I called Rachel. Straight to voicemail. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house became him returning. Every shadow stretched like his smirk. By morning, it got worse. The photos Nathan threatened with were now in our group chat. Rachel's voice cut like a knife when she stormed in. "You think you're clever? Trying to steal Nathan?" My voice broke. "No. He came here last night, I didn't send those." She snapped, eyes blazing. "Save it." Kayla and Aaron stood in silence, their pity useless. I went to my room and broke down. Something inside me screamed to run, to leave Cedar Grove behind. But another voice whispered, "Fight." That night, I texted Nathan, "We need to talk." He agreed to meet at a cafe near campus, arrogant enough to think he'd won. I slipped my phone into my pocket, recording app running. When I pushed him for answers, he smirked. "Rachel wanted you gone. Said you were dead weight." This was the fastest way. I was helping her out. Every poisonous word burned, but they were also my weapon. Back at the house, I sent the recording, not just to Kayla and Aaron, but to Rachel's parents, her classmates, her internship supervisor. By the next day, her mask cracked. She screamed at me, venom spilling, but the evidence was undeniable. Her internship was pulled. Nathan dumped her. Her reputation unraveled. For once, her cruelty bounced off me. Kayla and Aaron muttered apologies, but I didn't want their pity. I packed my things. When I walked out of Cedar Grove for the last time, I didn't look back. The porch that once felt like freedom now felt like a stage where someone had scripted my humiliation. But I wasn't the same Sophie who'd moved in months before. I had truth. I had proof. I had a voice, and I wasn't afraid to use it. I found a tiny studio apartment across town. Mine alone. No roommates, no knives disguised as compliments, no boyfriends lurking at the door. At night, I sat by the window scribbling stories, my camera by my side. But sometimes in the quiet hours, the memory returned. Nathan's smirk, Rachel's sharp laughter, that knock on the door that changed everything. Because sometimes the real monsters aren't strangers outside your home. Sometimes, they live under the same roof. Let's start the fifth story. The summer of 1997 carved itself into my bones like a scar. I was only 16, angry, restless, drowning in grief after losing my older brother in a car accident. My dad worked nights at the mill, my mom numbed herself with pills, and our home had become nothing but silence and slammed doors. Behind our backyard fence stood what the neighborhood kids called the back house. It had been abandoned for years. Sick gray paint peeled in strips, shutters sagged like broken wings, the roof bowed in defeat. Kids whispered about witches and ghosts, but nobody dared go inside. It was just another shadow at the edge of our lives. But at night, lying in bed, I heard it. A low, steady buzzing, like a massive wire humming deep inside those rotting walls. No power ran to that place. Everyone knew that. Yet the sound came back night after night, vibrating through my teeth, sinking into my skull. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing. It can't be real." But it didn't stop. Only my best friend Ree believed me. He was the kind of guy who laughed too loud in class and lived for trouble, but he never doubted me. One July afternoon, sweat dripping in the heat, I confessed how bad it had gotten. "You're still hearing it?" he asked. "Every night," I said. "It's like it's calling me." He grinned, half daring, half worried. "Then we go tonight. Flashlights, camcorder, the works. If we don't, you'll never stop hearing it." I wanted to say no. I wanted to hide. But what came out of my mouth was, "Okay." At 9:47 p.m., we climbed the fence. I remember the time because my digital watch glowed green, marking the moment my world split in two. The weeds swallowed our legs, damp with dew. My dad's heavy maglite cut through the mildew-scented air. Ree clutched his cousin's camcorder like it could protect him. The warped back door wasn't even locked. The hinges screamed like an animal as we pushed it open. Inside, it was exactly what you'd expect. Broken chairs, wallpaper curling off the walls, ceilings stained black from years of leaks. For a second, I almost laughed in relief. See? Nothing. But then Ree's beam caught something. On the cracked linoleum in the kitchen sat 2 metal dog bowls. One empty. The other filled with kibble, fresh, still soft, smelling faintly of meat. "This isn't old," I whispered. My fingers trembled as I touched it. And then the buzzing roared back, louder than ever, rattling the air itself. Before we could move, a guttural yelp split the silence. Not an animal. Human. Raw and broken. Then a voice. A man's voice, deep and commanding. "Eat it. Now." My stomach dropped into ice. We crept up the staircase, each board groaning like it was warning us to turn back. The buzzing grew heavier the higher we climbed, vibrating in our skulls. At the end of the hall, light bled from a cracked door. I pushed it open with trembling fingers. What we saw will never leave me. 3 people knelt on the floor, their necks locked in metal collars, nailed to the boards so they couldn't stand. Their hair was matted, their skin bruised. They trembled like animals, like broken toys. One woman lifted her face, tears streaking her cheeks. "Help us," she whispered. And then I saw him. A gaunt man, filthy clothes hanging from his skeletal frame. His jaw sharp as bone. In his hand, a crackling stun gun. He turned toward us, eyes cold as stone. Ree barely had time to shout, "Run!" The man lunged. In a blur, the stun gun struck Ree's ribs. My friend convulsed, his screams strangled into silence as he collapsed, twitching on the floor. I froze. The buzzing screamed inside my head. But instinct finally tore me free. I bolted. I stumbled down the stairs, skin tearing, knees raw. I clawed over the fence, sprinted into my house, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. My voice broke as I screamed. "Man, stun gun, people chained, please hurry." But guilt consumed me. Ree was still in there. So I grabbed a rusted pipe from the garage, heart hammering, and went back. The air inside stank of sweat and rot. Upstairs, the man dragged Ree toward the captives, muttering under his breath. His stun gun lay on the floor, discarded. I swung the pipe with every ounce of strength left in me. It smashed his arm. He howled, eyes blazing, turning toward me like a wolf about to tear flesh. But then, sirens. Red and blue lights cut through the cracked windows. Police stormed the hallway, tackling him, dragging Ree to his feet, freeing the victims. Their sobs filled the night, echoing against the walls like ghosts released. The man's name, I later learned, was Gerald Land. A disgraced veteran. The people chained upstairs? Missing persons from nearby towns. The back house didn't survive much longer. By the next year, it was bulldozed, the lot left barren. But even now, kids avoid it, whispering that the ground remembers. Ree survived, though burned scars still mar his ribs. We never talked much about that night. But when our eyes met in the halls, I knew he remembered too. And me? I'll never forget the sound. That buzzing. That endless, bone-deep buzzing. Sometimes I still hear it, humming through the silence. Because monsters don't always hide under beds or in dark forests. Sometimes, they live in the house just beyond your fence. And that is just a glimpse into the walls we trust to keep us safe. 9 new homes. 9 fresh starts. 9 places where fear found a way in. It makes you wonder how well you really know the house you live in right now. The creaks in the floorboards, the shadows at 3 a.m., the whispers you brush off as imagination. What if they're not so harmless? If you made it this far, you're one of the brave ones. Most people would have clicked away already. But not you. You stayed. That tells me you're not just curious, you're hungry for the truth hidden in the dark. So, if you're ready for more true horror stories that will keep you awake at night, make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next time the storm knocks at your door, you'll want to know what's waiting on the other side. And before you go, tell me in the comments. Backhand index pointing right, which story shook you the most tonight? Backhand index pointing right, or better, do you have a story of your own house that refuses to let you sleep? Your nightmare might be the next one I tell. Until then, keep the lights on. And whatever you do, don't ignore the sound of footsteps when you know you're alone.